many tricks that Regency women used to snare their quarry, one of which involved the subtle and not so subtle use of fans.
There were a lot of people here who came to take the waters because they were poorly. There were some who were not so poorly, and they wanted a cracking good time. And of course, that attracted the rakes and the card sharps and the quacks and, you know, sort of the fortune hunters. And of course, none of that was lost on Jane. You know, sort of she was a wonderful observer of human nature.
So if I was a Jane Austen heroine and I was coming here to a ball at the Assembly Rooms, what would I be doing with my fan?
You would definitely be giving out a few signals, good old body language, and perhaps the first one would be, come and talk to me. Left hand, and I'm desirous of making your acquaintance, would be far more flirtatious. In front of the face, with the eyes saying it all, I think. And then the fingering of the fan. I wish to speak to you, and this naturally could be accompanied by a meaningful and direct glance. But this is a really lovely one. Kiss me. I feel only to be used in dire emergencies.
That's incredibly forward, isn't it?
It is. I think a little risque. Yeah. I particularly like the gesture, which would be totally unforgettable, I'm sure, in my book, which was, do not forget me. Your final flourish as you leave the company. Extremely Spanish, I feel, in influence.
Do not forget me.
Yes, you've got it.
The Assembly Rooms were public spaces purpose-built for entertainment. Between 800 to 1,200 people would gather here, drinking tea, playing cards, walking about, talking and, above all, flirting. But make no mistake, this was no tea party. It was a matrimonial battleground. In those days, an unmarried woman was considered on the shelf at 24. The battle to find the right man could be a bloody one. It was all the difference between a lifetime of security and spending the rest of your days as a poor relation. So when one of Jane Austen's heroines actually has the temerity to turn down a marriage proposal, it's not just girlish caprice, it's an act of real courage.
Almost from the earliest moments of our acquaintance, I have come to feel for you a passionate admiration and regard, which, despite all my struggles, has overcome every rational objection, and I beg you most fervently to relieve my suffering and consent to be my wife.
In such cases as these, I believe the established mode is to express a sense of obligation. But I cannot.
When Elizabeth Bennet turns Mr. Darcy down the first time he proposes, it is really the rejection of the marriage of convenience by Jane Austen. When he proposes again, and Elizabeth accepts, she can do it because it's on her own terms. Jane Austen gets the happy ending she wants without compromising her heroine.
I think the proposal is the peak for a woman in a 19th century novel. The moment she is proposed to, she is both the victor and the one who has surrendered. It's got everything in it, that moment. It's supremely successful.
You are too generous to trifle with me. If your feelings are what they were last April, tell me so at once. My affections and wishes are unchanged. But one word from you will silence me on this subject forever.
Oh, my feelings are... I'm ashamed to remember what I said then. My feelings are so different. In fact, they are quite the opposite.
But not everybody likes Elizabeth Bennet. Charlotte Bronte thought that Jane Austen's heroine was really rather insipid. In Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte created a heroine much more to her own taste. Passionate, fiery, independent. Jane calls herself poor and obscure, plain and little, but she's afraid of nothing. The book was a sensation when it was published because the heroine defies Victorian ideas of ladylike behaviour. But it's this unconventionality that's ensured the novel's lasting appeal. The novel's been adapted many times, and I went to the set of the latest BBC version.
Action. Oh, hang on. Is Dylan there?
This features Toby Stephens playing Mr. Rochester and newcomer Ruth Wilson playing Jane Eyre.
I took it with me to Lowood.
And now?
Now, I think it can go here very well.
Now, monsieur, if we're very lucky, we might see some dragonflies. Did I ever tell you of my travels in the Blue Mountains of Mongolia? No? And you can tell me of your travels in the black and gloomy forest.
Writer Sandy Welch is particularly struck by Jane Eyre's independence of spirit.
Jane is a very modern character, even if you faithfully take everything from the book. I mean, she's a woman who's decided to earn her own living.
Yeah.
She's very keen to do that. Whenever she's in trouble, which is often, she thinks, well, I'll just go and I'll advertise and I'll make some money that way. And that is a very modern feeling. I think everybody in the 21st century can relate to that.
My feeling on rereading Jane Eyre was what a powerful character she is. It's no exaggeration to call her an inspiration.
1041, take one.
Camera, action.
You must imagine a restaurant. No. A dance hall. There isn't really a meeting place. There isn't really a word for this sort of place. Many respectable people come here at night to socialise. You must think of brilliant reds and pinks.
And how do you feel about playing a character who keeps describing herself as poor and obscure, plain and little? You know, she's always she's so down on her appearance.
Yeah. I don't know, I think there's so many girls that... Because she's only a teenager as well in this. She's only 18, 19 to begin with. And a lot of girls feel like that. I think it's quite a sort of common problem amongst girls. I felt like that, yeah, and I mean, there's moments in this where she's looking at herself in the mirror and sort of, you're revolting, or you're sort of angry at herself for thinking that someone could like her or fancy her. So I think it's so relevant to that modern day.
I mean, Jane Eyre's a fantastically popular heroine, and enduringly popular since she first appeared in the 1840s. But do you think she's a good role model?
I think she's a fantastic role model because she's so strong, so determined, but also is incredibly caring and passionate about others. And so I don't know. I think she's fantastic. I wish I was more like her, really, but I'm not.
One of the reasons Jane Eyre feels so contemporary is that she's not just waiting around to get married. Jane Eyre is the first romantic heroine who has a job.
In Victorian England, there were no professions open to women. Women couldn't become doctors, they couldn't become lawyers, they certainly couldn't become ministers of religion. They had no rights at all. Their position was very similar to that of women in many countries in the developing world now.
One of the very few professions open to women at the time was that of governess or private tutor, which is what Jane Eyre does in Charlotte Bronte's novel.
We're talking of governesses, Lady Ingram.
Oh, don't mention them. I'm so glad that Blanche and Mary have no longer any need for them. Governesses are a nuisance, all of them.
As middle-class women who had to earn their own living, governesses occupied an ambiguous social position.
It was extraordinarily hard to be a governess, because to be a governess you had to have a proper gentlewoman's education. So you had to be able to teach English, grammar, history, French, probably music, all the accomplishments. You had to be able to teach those things. To teach those things, you had to be educated yourself. So you are of a certain class.
The women, of course, are very beautiful.